Well, I caught the Greyhound bus in our little town of Stevens, caught it in front of the drugstore, and I went to Texarkana, and that's where I was sworn in. I was sworn in on the 26th of October in 1950. And then the next day, I was put on a train to San Antonio, and there the train was met by a truck that we hopped in the back of and went out to Lackland Air Force Base. And my life changed forever. It was such a transition, you know. It was a tremendous transition, you know, to not only the matter of being away from home, but also all of a sudden you're in the Air Force and you have all these, you know, you think at first everyone's mad at you. You know, you have these sergeants barking at you, you know, but it was quite a change. Of course, we went to Lackland Air Force Base, and we gathered there. They waited until they got 72 guys. It took a couple of days to put the flight together. Then, you know, we got on a regular schedule, a tremendous amount of drilling. Our basic training was actually the same as Army, because, you know, the U.S. Air Force was only about 2 years, less than 2 years old, I think, then, and all of our supervisors were all ex-Army, Army Air Force, and when we went through the line to get our clothing, they didn't necessarily have all of the blues. I know I was issued one pair of brown boots and a pair of black boots, and then when we got a chance to go to the PX, we got dyed and dyed those brown ones black. So, but by the time we got out of basic training, we all had our blue uniforms. Well, my first job was math instructor. In teaching in the field in math, it was a little bit different from what you would normally see, because when a flight of 72 men went to the academic area, there might be 6 go this way and 6 go this way, because you might have 6 guys working on their multiplication tables and fractions, and over here some would be working on trigonometry or algebra. So you went to class based upon your level, skill level in mathematics. And we also had to teach that way. They didn't want none of us taught a single flight. We never knew from day to day what level, where we'd be teaching. You might be teaching multiplication tables one hour, and the next hour you might be teaching trigonometry. And it'd be different flights. And they kept it that way intentionally, to keep the instructors on their toes. We all had to have our lesson plans. And well, I think the most difficult part, of course, it was difficult being away from home. You know, I never did really get homesick that bad, but as bad as some, but because we didn't have time to get homesick. And but there was a big adjustment in communicating and being with a group of guys that some of them had been in World War II. Several in my flight were from the Northeast, and some from the upper Midwest, and some from Texas. All of these, and it was just so much different, you know, such a different environment, and so that was difficult to get accustomed to. And some of them, you know, I guess I lived a kind of a protected life in the conversation and everything that I was surrounded by all of a sudden was not very conservative, you know. Well, I think the easiest part was the physical part. because I was in good physical condition. I had, you know, grew up on a farm, and then I had worked in the oil field. I had worked on oil rig, and so I was able to do my part. And I also was a hunter, and I knew how to use a rifle. So about 2 years before my enlistment was up, they built new housing facilities and a big 2-story academic building up on the base for the women of the Air Force. They were previously being trained at Kelly Air Force Base, which was, you know, there in San Antonio also. But all the academic training for both men and women would be done for that area in Lackland. You know, at one time Lackland was the only training base, but in January of 1951, they had so many people coming in, they opened a base in Sampson in New York and Parkson in California for training. But then they moved all the women from Kelly, they moved them up to Lackland. And I was promoted. That's when I became, I was already a staff sergeant, but I was assigned to be the NCOIC, non-commissioned officer, in charge of the academic training for the women of the Air Force. That was like being a principal, I guess, at a high school, more or less. And the superintendent, or my boss, of course, I had dotted line to our squadron commander. I was in the 37th 10th Instructor Squadron, and I had responsibility back to him, to the colonel, but then I also had a dotted line responsibility to the first lieutenant, who was like the school superintendent. And of course I went there and I took one of the men who I worked with in scheduling, and one who was, well, he was, back then they called him clerk typist, but he was really my administrative assistant. So that we had 3 of us guys up there, and all the women of the Air Force. Yes, and that's the main reason that I was there, was because of the mathematics, because I had input into, while I was there, of the math program, you know, for the men and the women, and but their math course was exactly the same as the men's.
Was your wife a musician and a singer as well?
No, she was always in my choir, but she was also always standing there in the soprano section of the choir. Her name was Dolores Ann, and she went by Ann.
And you met while you were stationed in San Antonio?
Yes, we met, and the way we met was the master sergeant, who was in charge of scheduling, invited me to their home one weekend, and we had a real good time, and I think his wife and little boy seemed to like me okay, so they kind of liked me. Then she started telling me about this niece she had that lived up in East Texas, and so I met Ann when she was about 16, little old skinny blonde-headed giggly girl with one of her friends, and so I was a macho sergeant. I didn't pay any attention to her, and but then I saw her 3 years later when she was 19, her first year of college, and I could never have, in my wildest dreams, ever found anyone like her. She and I had a great life together, and I miss her. I sure do. I miss her these last 2 years. The real journey that we made was her 8 years with Alzheimer's. In February, on Valentine's Day in 2014, she was diagnosed at the Smitting Center with Alzheimer's. So many people, don't want to go public with it. it's kind of something that, but Ann said, I want to go public. I want to do everything I can to help others. If you want to lose weight, I lost 47 pounds in a hurry, helping take care of her, but I was glad to do it. And during all that time, well, we stayed together. She wasn't able to drive or anything, so if you saw one of us, you saw both of us. Well, this may be a strong comment, but personally I feel that maybe a couple of years in the military would be very beneficial to many high school graduates. I think so many go to college, they have no idea what they what they want to do, and they just they go because everyone else goes. I think the military is a real good opportunity for a lot of young men and women, and it also gives you an opportunity. I felt a patriotic responsibility as well as just a career. I'd seen all of my uncles and cousins and all in World War II and Korea, and I kind of felt like that, I have an obligation to this country too. And I think that now we need more pride. We need people to take more pride and responsibility for, and need more patriotism within our country.